Shalom. I am Rabbi Nathan Davidovich, speaking to you on behalf of the webyeshiva.org, speaking to you from Efrat, Israel. I'm going to talk about this week's Torah reading, Parsha Vayera, and talk about how the story of the Akedah where Hashem commanded Abraham to bring up his only son, Isaac, to bring him up as an offering to God. The Akedah, we can learn a recipe for our lives in this very, very day as to how to pass the tests of life. The Torah begins with regard to the Akedah, with God commanding Abraham. He says, Kach es pinchas yechidecha asher ahavta es Yitzchak, take your son that you love, Yitzchak, and bring him to the land of Moriah, and bring him up for a sacrifice on one of the mountains that I will tell you about. It's interesting that the word used in this statement is not a commandment to Abraham to do this, but rather a request. Please, if you don't mind, I would like you to do this for me. That's God asking Abraham. The Meforshim ask why. Why is God asking this question like this as a request, please? And the Midrash says that God was pleading with Abraham that he pass this test. He said, if you don't pass this test, people will say that the first 9 tests that you did, this is the 10th, had no substance, and it would discredit the previous tests. And Rav Shimon Schwab went to a dinner to raise money for his yeshiva. And he spoke at the dinner and he mentioned this particular midrash, and he said, why would failing one test disprove the first 9 tests that Abraham successfully passed? Certainly if a person receives a 90% on a test, does that mean he got all the answers wrong? He didn't answer one of the questions correctly, but the rest were okay. They shouldn't be discredited. So the answer that Rabbi Schwab gave was that the Akedah wasn't only a test for Abraham, who had 10 tests. It was also a test for Yitzchak, his son. And if Yitzchak would not agree to this test, it would show that Abraham failed in passing on Emunah, faith in God, to the next generation. And all the other tests would be of no consequence. That's our job, to pass along Emunah. And Moshe Feinstein, Zechrein Lebrach, was at that same dinner, and he had a little different take on it. He said, there really are no compromises when it comes to Emunah. Either you believe in God, you have faith in God, trust in God, or you don't. He says 90% Emunah is nothing at all. But now we shouldn't think, because of this midrash, that in order to serve God, we have to be perfect in everything we do. We learn from the Akedah that by the language where instead of sacrificing Yitzchak, he saw a ram, and it says, Ayel Achar, another ram. There's only one ram there. The word Achar refers to the Akedah that we have in every generation. Every generation, the sages tell us, we each have 10 major tests in our life. We have to see if we can complete them. But don't think that if you can't complete one of the tests, you've failed in all of them. And this is illustrated by a story of the Chofetz Chaim. Somebody came to him, a student was studying in a yeshiva, And he told the Chofetz Chaim, I think I'm going to withdraw my son from the yeshiva and let him go out and learn a trade to make some money, learn how to make a living. So the Chofetz Chaim asked him, is your son succeeding in Torah? Does he learn well? How does he do in the yeshiva? Does he enjoy it? And he answered, yeah, he studies well, but he's not going to be one of the great sages, the great Talmidei Chachomim. He'll just be a regular Jew. And therefore he might as well learn how to earn a good living. So the Chofetz Chaim changed the subject, talked about some other things for a while, and he turned to the man, he says, tell me, what do you do for a living? And he says, I buy vegetables in the next town, a large market, and I bring them back to my small town and sell them. But it's a difficult business, because as I'm bringing the fruit and vegetables back, some of them get spoiled, some of them fall off the cart, and I barely make a living. I just make enough to buy bread and water for my family. Chofetz Chaim said, in my opinion, if that's the case, you should stop your business altogether. Anyway, you're not going to become rich like Rothschild. So what's the purpose? You're not going to be wealthy. The man said, yeah, okay, Rothschild. I'm not going to be a Rothschild, but I have to bring home some food for my children. Chofetz Chaim said, listen to what you were saying. Your neshama, just as you have to live by selling your vegetables, no matter how much money you make, your neshama, your holy soul, needs to live by studying Torah. And every drop of Torah that your son learns will give you and your son spiritual life. And you can't say, if you want to make a living, I'm only going to work if I become wealthy. Because a drop of success in Parnasa is also necessary. So you shouldn't say, if I can't, I won't do it. There's an interesting tale about the Golem of Prague. The Golem of Prague was created by the Maharal about 1600. He created it out of mud from the banks of the sea, and the legend has it he breathed life into this golem, this inanimate creature. It's like the first robot that was created, and it had amazing powers. It was very strong, and it was able to do all kinds of things, but it wasn't able to speak. So they tell a story about the golem. They said once somebody gave him a big bag, a large bag, and told him, go to the sea and fill this bag up with fish. A long time passed. The golem didn't return, so they went looking for him. They found him knees in the water, up to the water in his knees, and trying to catch fish with his hands. And they said to him, come home. And he showed him his sack. His sack was only half full. And he wasn't speaking, he couldn't speak. So they said, we don't need any more fish. So the golem heard that, and he turned the bag over and set the fish free into the sea. And this is an example of all or nothing approach. We have to cherish whatever we accomplish, even if it's a little. We try to pass the test that God gives us, but we're not going to be 100% successful. That doesn't excuse us from trying. As Rabbi Biederman quoted, Rabbi Melech Biederman quoted the sentence in the Ethics of the Fathers, Lo alecha hamalacha ligmor, v'lo ata ben chorim liftor mimenu. You don't have to finish all the work, but you're not permitted to give up. We have to do all that we can. And the key to doing this, the recipe that we have to learn from the Akedah is that we have to be able to face the tests with Emunah. And as was said, as I said earlier, there's no such thing as partial Emunah. You can't have 90% Emunah. You've got to have total belief in God. If you have total Emunah belief in God, you'll be able to pass every test that comes your way. Thank you for listening on behalf of the WebYeshiva.org. I wish everybody a Shabbat that is wonderful, full of Emunah and light. Shabbat Shalom.